In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 136, paragraph 1, we read, "Soon God's people will be tested by fiery trials, and a great proportion of those who now appear to be genuine and true will prove to be base metal. Instead of being strengthened and confirmed by the opposition, threats, and abuse, they will cowardly take the side of the opposers. The promise is, them that honor me I will honor. Shall we be less firmly attached to God's law because the world at large have attempted to make it void?" This is from Testimony Volume 5, page 136, paragraph 1. The above text does not only refer to the national Sunday law apostasy, but also has a direct application to what happened in 1914. Another important prophecy is that found in Testimonies, Volume 6, page 400, under the subtitle Attitude to Civil Authorities. It says, "As trials thicken around us, both separation and unity will be seen in our ranks. Some who are now ready to take up weapons of warfare will, in times of real peril, make it manifest that they have not built upon the solid rock. They will yield to temptation. Those who have had great light and precious privileges, but have not improved them, will under one pretext or another go out from us. Not having received the love of the truth, they will be taken in the delusions of the enemy. They will give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, and will depart from the faith." Now let's carefully consider this. Sister White says that those who were then ready at the time of writing in 1901 to take up weapons of warfare, guns, etc. Remember that the subtitle under which the text was written says Attitude to Civil Authorities. Will in times of real peril make it manifest that they did not build upon Christ, the law. What will happen? They will yield to temptation. They will be taken into the delusions of the enemy. They will give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, and will depart from the faith. Under one pretext or another, they will go out from us. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12, and in Matthew chapter 7, verse 26 to 27. Sister White was predicting a separation to take place among Seventh Day Adventists. She states that those who would take up weapons of warfare would depart from the faith. This would lead to a separation, because while a great proportion unite and cowardly take the side of the opposers of God's commandments, the remnant or the remainder of the believers will also unite in defense of God's commandment. Two groups will not be in agreement, hence they will not work together, as we read in Amos chapter 3, verse 7. The servant of the Lord clearly stated that those who will go for war, those who will bear arms, will be taken into the delusions of the enemy. They will give heed to seducing spirits and the doctrines of devils. How tragic, but true. Were Seventh Day Adventists giving heed to God's doctrine or devil's doctrine when they said, still in these times of stress, we have committed ourselves in defense of the fatherland, when God was calling upon them to commit themselves to defending his law? Were Seventh Day Adventists giving heed to God's doctrine or devil's doctrine when they said, we will also bear arms on Saturday, when God told them to remember Sabbath day to keep it holy? Was it God's doctrine or a delusion of the enemy, Satan's doctrine, to say, in regard to the bearing of arms or to military duties, it is a civil demand to which the established governments of God are entitled? When God says thus, if the requirements of the rulers are such as conflict with the laws of God, we ought to obey God rather than men. As we read in First Testimony, Volume 1, page 361, and even we read the answer from Acts chapter 5, verse 29. God again states, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight? That is from John chapter 18, verse 36. God says again, thou shalt not kill, for the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. That's from Exodus chapter 20, verse 15, and Luke chapter 9, verse 56. In the army, they, God's peculiar people, cannot obey the truth, and at the same time, obey the requirements of their officers, as we read from the testimony, Volume 1, page 361. Indeed, the greater proportion of the Seventh Day Adventist Church, and especially the leadership, was taken into the delusions of the enemy and were giving heed to doctrines of devils. Now, I want us to see how they excuse their sin. The testimony of God's Spirit speaking through Sister White stated that under one pretext or another, those who would take up weapons of warfare would go out from us. Did this happen? Oh yes. A pretext is an excuse. What was the excuse made by the Seventh Day Adventist leadership for departing from God's platform of truth, the narrow way? While we stand on the fundamentals of the Holy Scriptures and seek to fulfill the precepts of Christendom, keeping the rest day, Sabbath, Saturday, that God established in the beginning, by endeavoring to put aside all work on that day, still, in these times of stress, we have committed ourselves in defense of the fatherland. As we have read it even above in the letter to the Minister of War by H.F. Schubert, August in 1914. The excuse was, in these times of stress. So the Seventh Adventist Church broke the immutable law of God in full view of the whole wide world because of the time of stress. Terrible blindness. Strange infatuation. How tragic this. This turns our attention to one important question. Can sin be excused? Well, let's answer that question by posing another. If sin could be excused, did Jesus have to die? If sin could be excused, did Jesus have to die? Let's turn our eyes to the cross of Calvary and behold our dear Savior hanging on it. The cross upon which Jesus died testified that sin in the slightest degree cannot and will never be excused. Do you now see that this position of the Seventh Adventist Church took, of saying, still in these times of stress, we have committed ourselves in defense of the fatherland, was really a doctrine of the devil that washes away the whole plan of redemption, suggesting to man that sin can be excused? How tragic. This was really a great delusion. By this worldwide decision, the church was now teaching the world that sin can be excused and that Christ needed not have died. The Seventh Adventist Church was now accusing the times of the stress as the cause of their disobedience. But was this the real cause of their problem? Not at all. God had given them enough warning concerning the times of stress, so they should have been able to stand firm than any other people on the globe. The real cause of their problem was that they had a great light and precious privileges, but had not improved them, as we read this testimony, volume 6, page 400. They rejected the counsel of the true witness, Christ's righteousness. As we read more in Revelation chapter 3, verse 18 to 20, and even testimony to ministers and gospel workers, page 91. God had told them to walk in the narrow way, to their own the testimony, as we read in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20. But they said, we will not walk therein, as we find in Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16. This was the real cause of their apostasy, not the times of stress. This was not an instant fall, but a gradual departure from the narrow way. When the test came, it found them without protection against Satan. They were beholding things in a way Satan would have them see. And that is why they saw nothing wrong in excusing sin. They saw nothing wrong in killing their fellow human beings and in breaking the holy and blessed Sabbath. How tragic, but true still. Now remember that Sister White had predicted a great reformatory movement that would arise during this war crisis of 1914. Here is a reminder. While these calamities of war were witnessed among the nations of earth, another sign was presented, a great reformatory movement among God's people. This is recorded in General Conference Bulletin, May 19th, 1913, on page 34. Did this take place? To answer this question, let us consider the prophecy found in Testimony volume 6, page 400. The testimony says that as trials thicken around Seventh Adventist, both separation and unity will be seen in their ranks. Those who were ready to take up weapons of warfare and be engaged in war will be taken in the delusions of the enemy. They will give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils and will depart from the faith. And because they will depart from the faith, Sister White says that they will go out from us. It was quoted from the testimony for the church, volume 6, page 400. The spirit of prophecy makes it clear that the trials that thicken around the Seventh Adventists will bring a separation among them. One group will be of those who disobey God by yielding to temptation, by taking up weapons of warfare to engage even in open battle. The other group will be of those who stand firmly for God in defense of his law, which is made void by the laws of men. While one group unites in disobedience and on the platform of error, the other unites in obedience and on the platform of eternal truth. Because these two groups are traveling in the two different paths, broad and narrow way respectively, having different interests, they can't work together. Hence, separation is the result. Sister White says that those who would go for war depart from the faith, hence they will depart from us. The word us used here refers to those faithful Seventh Day Adventists who remained true to God even in times of stress. And the good thing here is that Sister White placed herself on this side of Adventists, those who didn't go for war. Now remember that the group that depart from the faith is the great proportion of the church. So the true and preaching children of God would only be a little minority. One other point to remember is that Sister White places herself on the side of those who didn't cowardly take side of the opposers, as we see in the Testimony volume 5, page 136, by supporting and even going for war. Why? Because those kept the faith once delivered to the saints. This means that the Church of God was now this minority which remained in the faith, the narrow way, to the law and the testimony. Remember Christ's words, if ye continue in my words, then are ye my disciples indeed. We did this in John chapter 8, verse 31. The minority that didn't go for war constituted the true disciples of Christ because they are the ones that continued in his word. Remember that God's church is defined in terms of the people walking on the narrow way. In addition to that, remember that Sister White had a vision of the Advent people traveling to the seat of God on a narrow path, and that some of them were falling off this path because of denying the light behind them. Once again, when World War I broke out in 1914, and the Seventh Day Adventist Church apostatized by breaking God's law in full view of the world, the Church of God seemed as about to fall, or rather to have fallen, but the true faith was not to become extinct. God has ever preserved a remnant to serve him. As we read this in Prophetic and Prophets, page 125. Evidence of the two groups that Sister White talked about in Testimonies for the Church, volume 6, page 400, is found in the following extract of an article that appeared in a German newspaper in 1918. At the beginning of the war, our denomination divided into two parts. While 98 of our membership took the position on Bible grounds that it was their conscientious duty to defend the fatherland with weapons, and that also on the Sabbath, and this united position of the leaders was at once forwarded to the War Department. 2%, however, they did not submit themselves to this united resolution, and therefore had to be disfellowshipped because of their unchristian conduct. This is recorded in Dresdener Neuesten Nachrichten, April 12, 1918. A Dresden German daily newspaper. The testimony of God's Spirit through his servant, Sister White, was fulfilled. She had stated, soon God's people will be tested by fiery trials, and the great proportion of those who now appear to be genuine and true will prove to be base metal. Instead of being strengthened and confirmed by opposition, threats, and abuse, they will cowardly take the side of the opposers. This is written in Testimonies, Volume 5, page 136, paragraph 1. The great proportion corresponds to the 98% of the Seventh Day Adventist membership that indeed took the side of the opposers of God's law. The 2% that refused to go for war and even to support it in any way were disfellowshipped for their so-called unchristian conduct. And what was this unchristian conduct? Obedience to God's commandments. How tragic, but true.